And we are back, a midweek episode of the 6 Yard Line podcast, match week 26 recap, and we're going to come quick with today's show. What's up, Noel?
I don't know, man. I can't keep up. The news, the games, holy smokes. Like, can any more people be sacked in one day? We're going to get into it, but like, I just, I just feel like all we've done is talk about being sacked. And yeah, it's a pretty wild couple of days in the Premier League.
Yeah, it has definitely been an interesting 48 hours when it comes to the coaching ranks. And I would say there's probably a few coaches that are still on the hot seat to see if they'll finish out the cap this season. If you're looking at Palace's Oliver Glasner, and I'm sure a couple other coaches could be on the potential outs.
Yeah, so I think we should get into it because obviously we had some games on Tuesday, I think, that started the chaos, right? So we can
Yeah, yeah,
we were going to those. Obviously, I think the biggest thing, we'll just quickly cover some of those, and then we'll get to the main game on Tuesday. But Chelsea, 2-2 with Leeds. Cole Palmer has just nominated himself for Miss of the Year. Should have won it for Chelsea. Missed from a yard out and put it over the bar. It was easier to score than miss. But Cole Palmer, when it's not a penalty, doesn't score that many goals. So
yeah.
it's a great result for Leeds. They got another point. Chelsea, clearly dropped 3 points there or 2 points because they should have won that at a canter. They let Leeds in, and in credit to Leeds, they never gave up and they fought through it. Everton, Bournemouth, this is a result I didn't expect. But at the end of the day, I think Ryan, the Bournemouth player, I think is their next new superstar. Looks every
Yeah,
bit of,
he looks,
it looks really good. I think he looks
yeah,
fantastic. And then, obviously Everton, another red card. O'Brien sent off. He was perplexed why he was sent off. He was the last man. He took out the player. Again, I don't really have any complaints about it. I do laugh when they're trying to plead their case and it's a clear red card. But at the end of the day, Bournemouth win 2-1. Bournemouth's been on a bit of a slide lately, and I think this is a really big turning point result for them, particularly after
yeah,
the last
for
couple of
sure.
weeks. And then the one that I think some people think we were going to talk about, which was the West Ham Man United. West Ham were winning this game for a long, long time. The poor guy waiting to get his haircut is not only not going to get a haircut now, he's also got to listen to Wayne Rooney calling him out for about attention seeking, which I roll my eyes at it. Get over it, Wayne. Get a life. But at the end of the day, United managed in the 96th minute to rescue it. Benjamin Sesko rescued it for them. I'm very glad they did rescue it because otherwise Forest and West Ham would be tied on points. So thank you, Sesko. Sorry to the dude that's not getting his haircut, but you have to wait. United's gonna have to find 5 more games in a row for him to get a haircut. So it restarts. Feel bad for him, but oh well.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's he's you know what? It's entertaining for us because we still have something to talk about when it comes to him and his overgrown hair.
Yeah,
But it was, you know what? West Ham had that game or had the opportunity to walk away with the 3 points and stumbled in the end, which is not really surprising, right? We've talked about their lack of depth, and if key players aren't contributing, they are going to struggle. So that again isn't the biggest shocker. I think the Chelsea one would be more of a surprise, but they have looked much better as of late, how they've been playing. And you're right, that Palmer sitter was, I mean, even the coach had to mention, like, that's like a once in a lifetime type of miss. Like, most of the time, he's going to bang that in the back of the net. It just, the one time when you need him to score, he has one of those blunders. So, drop points for both Chelsea and Man United when they're trying to secure that Champions League spot. But they're still in a good position as with what 10, 8, 12 games left, I think, or something like that. So we'll see how things play out. You're right. The Cherries, that was a massive 3 points for them. They have looked They have struggled this season, haven't been as sharp, haven't uh, been that team that can pull off the upset like they were last season, but definitely had a good game against Everton. And if we looked at it, what team leads the league in red cards? Is it Everton?
It's Chelsea, actually.
Oh, surprise,
It's
surprise
okay
on
though.
that.
They have VAR on their side, so every time they need a goal, they just call for a VAR penalty. Again, what, 3 in a week? Must be nice.
Yeah, there you go. But I
All right,
guess
let's
we will get to the
get
big
on to the
game from
Spurs game
Tuesday.
because I think this is the
Let's
game
go.
out of the chaos. I think we said it on Monday that if they didn't get a result, Thomas Frank was going to be in trouble, and I think we knew it was going to happen, right? Because Newcastle hadn't won away in a while, and they also needed the result because they have been a bit of a weird patch themselves. But at the end of the day, this has been Spurs' MO for a while. We highlighted this week in the last 15 weeks or last 15 games, they haven't been good enough. And whether it's players listening to Thomas Frank, whether players not believing in his system, his style, his play, it just wasn't working. And then, they were down 1-0 after I think Newcastle scored in injury time at the end of the first half. And then Archie Gray gave them some hope on 64. And then, it goes down the other end of the pitch. Jacob Ramsey, 68 minutes, 4 minutes after equalizing, he bangs it home, and that's it. It pretty much ends the Thomas Frank experience at Spurs because they didn't ever really get going. Spurs weren't really mustering a lot. And, when you look at shots and things like that, Spurs had 16 to Newcastle's 21. Like, you're the home team. You should be winning that. They've only won twice at home all year. They haven't won this calendar year in the Premier League. And Thomas Frank is, relieved of his duties the following morning. The Spurs fans and the Newcastle fans, to be fair, were both singing "You're getting sacked" in the morning, and surely he was, and it's inevitable. Spurs have not been good enough for a long time. Do I think it's Thomas Frank? No, I don't think it's all Thomas Frank. I don't think these players brought into what he wanted to do. I think some of these players on this Spurs team have got ideas above the station. Their club captain's a joke. Romero, like the Mickey Mouse of defenders. I'm a World Cup winner. Like, you want a World Cup winner because of Messi. You didn't, and the help of FIFA. You didn't win it based on his performance or his play. And, guys like that, I think, generally have become egotistical with Spurs.
Yep.
And you saw it when they refused to shake Thomas Frank's hand earlier in the season.
Yeah.
You saw the disrespect. You see the Twitter posts. You see the social media posts. It's disrespect. They don't respect the club. They don't respect the manager. And he should have stripped him of the captaincy, set the tone, and told everybody, you're not world beaters. You're not. That squad is not a world beaters. That squad is good for about 6th, 7th, or 8th. That's about where they are. That's where they should be. And
Well,
that's a
I mean,
strong. And don't get me wrong, they've got injuries. We can't not say they don't. They do have a lot of players out. But when they're all fit and healthy, that best team is probably 8th.
yeah, and that's the thing is I think outsiders are able to analyze it a lot easier and look at the club for what it's worth. They're not a top club. And I think, Andrew's on one of those the overlap. And, apparently he said that they're not a top 6 club. But in many ways, he's not wrong, right? They're a top 6 club maybe when it comes to the money they make, but that's about it. When it comes to what they put on the pitch as a team, they're not a big club. They're not a club that scares anyone in the Premier League. They're not one that each year are title contenders, that are not FA Cup contenders. They're not usually a team you're in that conversation. They're on the outside looking in. And I think there are players on that team that have this big club mentality, but don't play like a big club player. And that you're getting the result. Like, if we look at where they were last year and where they are right now, there's not much difference in how they're playing in the Premier League. They finished at 16th or 17th last season?
Well, that's the thing. Like, if you look at the 2024-2025 season, Ange got 30 points at this stage, and I think Thomas Frank had 29 points. So they haven't changed. Again, they had injuries, so you have to take that into account. That you can list quite a strong lineup that they're missing. But at the end of the day, the bottom line is like this club isn't good enough and hasn't been good enough. They don't invest. They have a wage cap structure that handicaps them against getting the really best players. They didn't go and recruit that well in January. They brought Conor Gallagher in, and that was about it. And Conor Gallagher is not going to change the world for you. He's just going to make you more solid. So at the end of the day, Thomas Frank didn't get a lot of help from the board. He didn't get a lot of help from the players. And I think the players didn't want to buy into it. I think there's a bit of snobbery in that. I think, again, this is like I referenced this today, this is exactly the same as what happened when Nuno was there. The players didn't buy into it. Their egos and their cockiness is the real problem in that club. And a bunch of guys, pretty much down tools for most of the time and got the manager fired. So it is what it is, and I think that's what it's going to be. And I think whoever goes in next, it's got it's got a job to do, and it's going to be interesting to
Yeah.
see, who they bring in, because at the end of the day, you see all the names being linked. There's some that want Postecoglou back, which I think was highly entertaining. I think some want Pochettino back, but he's not going to give that job up with the USA with the World Cup looming. And I think at the end of the day, it sounds like it might be De Zerbi, who just got fired from Marseille. Was it yesterday? So
No, like, well, basically. But I heard De Zerbi's already kind of said he's looking to take a bit of a sabbatical, so he's not looking to jump back into coaching right away. And I mean, I could see De Zerbi, if anything, waiting till summer. Why, like, is the Spurs job that big of a job that it's the first one he's going to take? I could see him waiting to see what other positions open up. There might be something that suits his style more so, because truthfully, I don't see his personality coming in and working with Spurs, especially with the kind of players they currently have on the roster. So I think unless and if we know how Spurs ownership, I don't see them giving him full carte blanche where he can totally rebuild this roster.
yeah, I think they're going to struggle. Like, I think whoever's going to go in there, I think that the biggest thing is with Spurs, they don't believe they're in a relegation battle. We talked about this on Monday. And I think, we kind of said they're in a relegation fight whether they want to or not. I want to believe it or not, but they are. They are really just above there. They can't keep losing. So you've got to bring someone in that's got a little bit of, how do you say it, firefighting. You got to have someone that's got to really fire up the crowd and kind of get those players moving and motivating and really kind of drive that energy to push them away. Because at the end of the day, Nuno's got West Ham fighting like that. Leeds have been under Farker, have been fighting like that. And Forest have had 1 week good, 1 week bad. We'll get onto them in a minute. But at the end of the day, those teams in and around that bottom five is like, well, I say the bottom five above Burnley and Wolves is one. It could be one of five teams that goes down, and I don't really
Yep.
know who it's going to be. And if they don't get the right person, if they get somebody comes in, if they go and hire like an ex-player, like I think who did they have last time? That was not the greatest. Keeps getting it. I can't remember his name. Dang it. But if you don't get this appointment right for whether it's short term, long term, or whatever else, Spurs could get relegated if you don't get it right? And they've got to react quick, and they should have. If they've sacked him, they should have had a plan. But it doesn't seem like they had a plan. So I don't really know who they're going to go if they don't go to De Zerbi, and if they don't get somebody like that in. But I don't know if De Zerbi's got that fight in him. Do you know what I mean? So, but we'll see.
We'll get. Yeah, I guess the only time will tell. I'm sure in the next few days we will figure that out or find out who is stepping in to take that position. But
I will say though, the fun suggestions, the fun name suggestions. I sent you the one where somebody tweeted Harry Redknapp, and then he's like somebody called Crouchy, somebody called Nico, and then Peter Crouch tweeted back at him, "I'm ready. Let's get the band back together." I gotta say that was fantastic. And then whoever did the Sam Allardyce, unknown Italian manager, and it's Sam Allardyce with an Italian mustache. That one is going around today. That one did make me laugh. Unknown Italian manager Sam Allardyce is the man to call in this situation. So that one was pretty entertaining. But yeah, there's some really good funny ones out there, but I don't know who they're gonna get in.
Only time will tell. Let's move on then to yesterday's games because there was some more drama that unfolded after the end of the results from yesterday. So yesterday we'll start off Aston Villa 1-0 win over Brighton. Um, they needed those 3 points. They want to stay in the race for the title. I think we both believe they're still that team that's on the outside looking in, but it's still a massive 3 points for a team that neither of us expected to be where they are right now. So good result, good home result. Um, I'm
Not
gonna
for
say
Brighton.
this.
It
No, not for Brighton.
continues to be a downward spiral.
Who,
They are sliding down this league. They are going to get dragged into this relegation fight because I
yep.
think you've got what I don't know what the point total is, but I think it's like West Ham's 24, Forest at 27, Spurs 29, Leeds 30, Brighton's 31, Palace is 32. Palace look like they're going to slide down there a bit. You mentioned it. Brighton's sliding. Leeds are on the up. Spurs, we don't know what they're going to do. Forest, we don't know what they're going to do. And West Ham seems to be on the up. So it's going to be an interesting.
Well, that's if you look at from 13 to 18, West Ham have been the best performing team out of all those teams in the past 5 games.
Yeah, that's fair.
Right. So, and they've also accumulated the most amount and if you want to throw Fulham in that conversation, who are at 34 points, still West Ham have been the best team amongst all those teams have accumulated the most amount of points. So yes, Brighton, Leeds, yes, they're doing well, but still, you know what I mean? It's nothing is set in stone. Um, but that was a good, for a team that's struggling, Brighton needs to find something to turn it around, or at least to kind of survive being in that battle. But they're not. In many ways, they're slightly a little safer, but not by much. Because I mean, 7 points is in football. Few games, few results. All of a sudden, you're in that zone. So they have to be careful. Um, I'm gonna go to. I'm gonna skip over the Burnley game just to mention Man City 3, Fulham 0. Probably not really surprised with that result. When Man City's rolling, they will put 2, 3 goals against almost anyone in the league. So I think we can't be too shocked by that. And Fulham haven't really um, last year they definitely were more of a threatening team. Yes, we've seen Fulham, be in games this year, be the team that if it's close, they'll score that late winner, but they didn't have anything for Man City yesterday. Um, I'll even go to the Sunderland hosted Liverpool. First half, so dominant of a performance by Liverpool. Um, Sunderland definitely got more into the game in the second half. If you look at the stats, it'll be like 56, 40 something percent possession for Liverpool, but it that possession may not really show the true level of play of the game. Because Liverpool definitely were the better team. They controlled the play. They had way more opportunities, way more shots on goal. They were the more threatening of the two teams. Liverpool looked excellent defensively, and got the one goal off of a corner kick header from um, Van Dijk. It was a deflection off of the defender, but still, good finish, good result, and for a team that's still trying to, fight for their Champions League spot, and having both Man United and Chelsea drop points, that was a big result for Liverpool. So they'll take that. Now, the game for me that was the big before we get to your game, Crystal Palace Burnley. Now, I was at work and I was a little busy. You messaged me and I'm reading your message, but I'm too busy to respond. So, Noel, tell me about what you saw during that game, especially the way the first half went played out.
Well, it was one of those games, right, where I was like, obviously, I had the Forest game on, but I had notifications on at the bottom of my screen, and I was like, what the heck? Because I was getting a little bit annoyed at Forest. But you look at Palace, right, and it's like Jorgen Strand Larsen on his debut, right? He scores two
Beautiful
goals,
game.
and you're like, what? All right, here he comes. That's more than he scored all season at Wolves, and in his first game, and banging them in. Warrington was back for Palace as well, and he got the assist on the first, and then Lerma got the assist on the second, and Strand Larsen, obviously, two goals. Great start. They're 2-0 up. This is Burnley. Burnley's been miles off it for weeks. We've been mentioning it. And then, former Man United player Hannibal Miabi scores a really nice goal. And suddenly Burnley had hope. And then all of a sudden it was, we went from the 40th minute where it's 2-1 to suddenly the 44th minute. Anthony scores for Burnley to tie it up. And then 2 minutes later, Lerma then scores. And it's suddenly 3-2 in the first half. And I'm like, oh my God, this could be, 5-4, 6-4. And that's where the scoring ended. And you're kind of just anticlimax, unfortunately. You know what I mean? Just because the first half,
Yeah,
absolutely the best first half of football. And when the Forest, I was watching the Forest game, and then I flicked over and switched to go back, and fortunately for me on DAZN, they have you can go back and watch all the goals from the highlights from the first half, and it's a banger of a game, and then it just stopped
fizzled
for the
out.
goal. And
Yeah,
Palace again, just we mentioned it earlier, they could get dragged into this fight too, because they've got to figure it out. And when you look at them and you look at what they've done, they've gone and spent all this money on Strand Larsen. They still kept Mateta. But I think defensively, they're going to give up more goals. So they've now got to start scoring more goals than conceding them. And I just don't know if they're going to get out of this intact without, because again, they've seemed to be another team that could get quite easily pulled into this quagmire that is the bottom half of the league. And, you lose a couple of games and you're looking over your shoulder and you're panicking. And I think since we know that the manager at Palace is on his way out, Glasnow's on his way out, you kind of wonder what his drive and energy and commitment is to the cause, and it just doesn't look good, right? In
nope,
truth,
not one bit. And you definitely think with all the hype going into the season for Palace, this is definitely not the season this club was expecting. Even with the conversation of the players leaving and whatnot, they were still, they won their first trophy with the um. Which one did they win again? Was it the FA
FA
Cup or the
Cup,
Carabao Cup?
FA Cup, yeah. And
Yeah,
yeah,
but
and I think you can say that of all three teams that were stellar last year. I think if you look at Forest, obviously were in a Champions League spot for most of last year. We'll get onto them in a minute, but we're a hot mess. Palace look like they're a hot mess. Newcastle United won the Carabao Cup, won their first trophy. Yes, they beat Spurs this week, but most of the season they've been like a yo-yo up and down, and they're a hot mess at times. So again, you've kind of got all these teams that had a great year last year are all suddenly hitting the bricks, and
yeah,
yeah, I guess that's the perfect segue into yesterday's debacle with Forest, because as much as I will always defend Mr. Marinakis for what he has done for Forest over the last 5 to 10 years. I think, what is it, 2017, 9 years he's been at the club. Yesterday was just a comical farce. I just don't really know what to say about it. So apparently he called players up to his box to talk to the players about Sean Dyche. And once he talked to players, and then apparently he locked the players out of the dressing room. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's what I heard today. And he relieved Sean Dyche of his duties. And I think if you look at a lot of the Forest fan base, a lot of them didn't like the appointment of Dyche. A lot of people went along with it with the understanding that you're in a firefight, you don't want to get relegated. You need some guy that's been there, done that, and done it before, which Sean Dyche does. He's obviously got connections to the club, lives next door to the club. There's a whole lot of plus in that column, so you understand it. But I think those performances, and I won't get into the Wolves game just yet, but those performances before the game that I went to in Braga, when the fans are singing, "You don't know what the F you're doing." If you haven't seen that video, I sang it quite loudly because it was a bit like that. And you kind of looked at some of those performances this year since when Dyche has been there. You look at the Villa game, you look at the Everton games, you just kind of go, what we don't, we Jekyll and Hyde, we're too Jekyll and Hyde, and it's very, very, very hard to kind of, predict what they're going to do. Now, do I think based on the performance yesterday against Wolves, he deserved to get sacked? No. And if you watch the game and if you go and look at the stats, they're pretty damning in terms of we just couldn't score. And I tweeted during the game yesterday, the fact that we've missed Chris Wood for 18 games this year has really shown in how we are this year. Because at the end of the day, the thing that people don't really understand about Forest last year is they were the best in the league with efficiency in front of goal. And what does that mean? Essentially, it means every time we get a chance, we generally put it away 50% of the time last year, which is unbelievably unrealistic and high. But that was also the way Chris Wood was playing. It's also the way that the Forest were playing to his strengths. And that's kind of what's really kind of derailed a lot of the season. And I know everybody wants to say, well, why it's Chris Wood, but that's what he was doing last year. He was scoring goals at times when we needed a goal. And right now, we can't buy a goal. They had 35 shots yesterday. 35.
34.
And it's like, it's insane. You have 35 shots on goal and you don't score. You have, 40 odd touches inside the box. You kind of go and look at the aerial duels one, they won 23. You go and look at the corners, it was 8-2. And if, the stat that made me,
Dominated.
it was all over the pitch. Like, you look at just the shots on target,
Assist.
shots off target, the attempts on the box, the total. You look at it, it was just one-way traffic. Wolves did not look
Yeah.
interested in that game. Wolves struggled to get the ball forward. Wolves struggled to break them down. Forest were camped in that half. And they just couldn't score. And this is the problem is you need a striker. You need to go on the and it just didn't happen. And Sean Dyche has paid the price for it. And right or wrong, that's that's the way it goes in football. But at the end of the day, Forest clearly had something lined up if this was going to be the way, because Vitor Pereira, the former Wolves manager, is coming to Forest. That's will be announced officially tomorrow, from my understanding. And Vitor Pereira has a history with Marinakis, so I know there's a lot of people that will be like, well, how long is he going to survive in Marinakis? He won the double for Marinakis at Olympiacos. They know each other well. He knows his style. He knows what he wants. Pereira plays a lot more attacking. When he did start at Wolves last year, he got Wolves playing quite well, and I think Wolves scored a lot more goals under him last year, and they were a lot better towards the end of the season, and he kept Wolves up. I think the biggest question is, he got sacked this year by Wolves, but at the end of the day, as Rob Edwards is finding out at Wolves, you can't win with this team. There's just not enough quality in this Wolves team. So you don't care who's. You could have Harry Potter in charge. You ain't winning a game, because
No.
they keep selling all the best players at Wolves and then expect them to do well. So the Pereira deal, I like it. We don't know the terms. What I was told today by someone from that's connected to the club, that is, the sole thing is they still want to take a run at Marco Silva.
I
So
heard that too. That's been
which
reported.
makes sense. It does make sense, because that's somebody that I think Marinakis likes, and I think the way he plays is progressive and forward. I think that's the kind of manager I think Edu wants. Whether Edu stays at Forest beyond the season is another question, but I do think they want somebody. So I don't know if the Pereira deal is a short-term deal, a one-year deal, and then they move on from him depending on how the end of the season goes, and then they bring in Marco Silva as long as it's still in the Premier League, because I don't think he's going to be interested in them if they're a championship side. So it's chaotic, and it is a little frustrating, because like I think I did our YouTube short last night at 9:40. All right, I literally just was doing something else. I was in a mood because they lost, and then I was working on some stuff, and then I literally came up the stairs, and somebody messaged me and said, "Have you seen this?" And then sent
And
me a link, and I was like, "You've got to be kidding me!" And then I messaged you like, "Daishi's gone."
so here's the thing with that before we move on to the last game. Now, we found out late last night here in Canada, in Toronto. The UK and England, they're 5 hours ahead of us.
Yeah,
So if we're finding out after 9, that means
it was
this
done
was
after the game.
announced,
It was literally done after the game.
but it wasn't announced to the. By the time the media got it, most of the media like it was basically all like first thing this morning kind of news. A lot of people could have went to bed before finding out last night.
Oh, a lot of people did. I can tell you that from when I woke up this morning, I had like 26 messages of people telling me that Daesh had been sacked. I did respond back to a few of them. Yeah, I know. I did post a video. You all missed it. Check your notifications. So thanks for the updates. But no, like again, it was just, yeah, it's chaotic, and 4 managers in one season. I got a couple of smart asses message me and said, "Oh, you're the new Watford." No, Watford had 5 managers in one season, so we're still holding on to that record. Thank you very much. They can keep that one. But yeah, it's just he's just not. At the end of the day, I think if Nuno goes down, I think I wouldn't be surprised if you don't get Nuno back, and I think that might be an interesting point. But it's just I'd like a quiet day, just and stability would be nice. God knows how the
Yeah.
players feel.
Oh, I can imagine. All right, so that leaves us with today's result, and Brentford hosted Arsenal in another one of the one of the many London teams. I guess you want to call it a London derby, but yes, North London versus what's it? Brentford, like West London,
Yeah, well, yeah, north.
somewhat. um,
Yeah, it
but
depends.
yeah, so
The West? I can't remember. I forget. It's
I
been a while.
think we can honestly say Brentford is the surprise team of the season, more so than Sunderland, because neither one of us would have predicted that Brentford would be in the top 10, and neither of us would have seen them playing the way they played today against Arsenal, where they I thought they played an excellent match. Like Arsenal did get the early goal from well, not early, but the first goal in the second half by Madueke. Good finish, had the defense going one way and the keeper, and then was able to head it across the keeper's body. Nothing Kelleher could have done for that. Gave Arsenal a 1-0 lead, where Brentford was shutting them down throughout, especially the first half and a good chunk of the second half up until that point. But what they didn't do is they didn't falter, because Arsenal kept the front foot going, kept pushing, trying to get the second goal, but weren't able to. And 10 minutes later, Brentford get the equalizer. And after that point, I would honestly say Brentford looked like the team that might be able to sneak away the 3 points. They came close. They had good fight. Rhea made a couple big saves late in the game, and I think that was even though it was a draw, I thought it was a good game. I thought it was, both teams just you can say this is one of those games where you can say both teams deserved a point. You can't say one team was the better team and should have walked away with 3 points. That was a fair result for both teams. Disappointing if you're an Arsenal fan, when you look how City are now only 4 points behind you, um, and that's the pressure definitely has to be creeping in on the club, because you've dropped some points over the past few weeks more so than you have earlier in the season. And we keep saying a City team is not the team you want to play with, uh, as they somehow figure things out. So, um, an unfortunate result if you're an Arsenal fan. I think if you're from Brentford, you'll take that draw and continue your impressive season.
Yeah, you know what? And we just been talking about managers, and I think the biggest question and the biggest thing I said at the start of the season, and I didn't think that Keith Andrews was good enough to be a Premier League manager. Um,
Facts.
but I think
I remember.
it's fair to say that I'm completely wrong, and that's why I'm sat here and he's there. So no, I just think it's a bit like Gary O'Neill when Gary O'Neill came on the scene at Wolves. I think everybody predicted Wolves to go down under Gary O'Neill.